The next practice of Buddha's Eightfold Path is right livelihood. To practice livelihood, that is Samyaga Ajiva, you have to find a way to earn your living without transgressing your ideals of love and compassion. The way you support yourself can be an expression of your deepest self, or it can be a source of suffering for you and others. The sutras usually define right livelihood as earning a living without needing to transgress any of the five mindfulness trainings, not dealing in arms, in the slave trade, the meat trade, the sale of alcohol, drugs, or poisons, or making prophecies or telling fortunes. Monks and nuns must be careful not to make unreasonable demands on the laity for the four requisites of medicine, food, clothes, and lodging, and not to live with material requisites in excess of immediate needs. Right livelihood is not just a personal matter, it is our collective karma. Suppose I am a school teacher and I believe that nurturing love and understanding in children is a beautiful occupation. I would object if someone were to ask me to stop teaching and become, for example, a butcher. But when I meditate on the interrelatedness of things, I see that the butcher is not the only person responsible for killing animals. We may think the butcher's livelihood is wrong and ours is right, but if he didn't eat meat, he would not have to kill. Right livelihood is a collective matter. The livelihood of each person affects everyone else. The butcher's children might benefit from my teaching, while my children, because they eat meat, share some responsibility for the butcher's livelihood. Suppose a farmer who sells his cattle as meat wants to receive the five mindfulness trainings. He wants to know if he can, in light of the first training to protect life. He feels that he gives his cattle the best conditions for their well being. He should continue to look deeply and practice mindfulness with his local Sangha. Millions of people, for example, make their living in the arms industry, helping directly or indirectly in manufacture conventional and nuclear weapons. The US, Russia, France, Britain, China, and Germany are the primary suppliers of these weapons. Weapons are then sold to third world countries where the people do not need guns, they need food. To manufacture or sell weapons is not right livelihood, but the responsibility for this situation lies with all of us politicians, economists, and consumers. We have not yet organized a compelling national debate on this problem. As we study and practice the Noble Eightfold Path, we see that each element of the path contained within all the other seven elements. We also see that each element of the path contains a noble truths of suffering, the making of suffering, and the ending of suffering. Practicing the first noble truth, we recognize our suffering and call it by into that suffering to discover its basis, and that is practicing the second noble truth. These two practices contain the first two elements of the Noble Eightfold Path, namely right view and right thinking. All of us have a tendency to run away from suffering, but now with the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, we have the courage to face our suffering directly. We use right mindfulness and right concentration to look courageously at our suffering. The looking deeply that shows us clearly the basis of our suffering is right view. Right view will not show one reason for our suffering but layers upon layers of causes and conditions. Seeds we have inherited from our parents, grandparents, and ancestors. Seeds in us that have been watered by our friends and the economic and political situations of our country, and so many other causes and conditions. Now the time has come to do something to lessen our suffering. Once we know what is feeding our suffering, we find a way to seize interesting that nutriment, whether it is edible food, the food of sense impression, the food we receive from our intentions, or the food from the consciousness. We do this by practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Remembering that right speech is also listening deeply. To practice these three aspects, we take the mindfulness trainings as our guide. Practicing according to the mindfulness trainings, we see that when we speak, act, or earn our living, we do it with right mindfulness. Right mindfulness lets us know when we say something that is not right speech or do something that is not right action. Once right mindfulness is practiced along with right diligence, right concentration will follow easily and give rise to insight or right view. In fact, it is not possible to practice one element of the Noble Eightfold Path without practicing all seven other elements. This is the nature of interbeing, and it is true for all of the teachings offered by the Buddha. So, with this video, we have completed the total 8 practices or limbs of uh, Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path completely.